Salutations and welcome to the Texas Latino Comic Con Mi Casa event. We are going to talk right now with the creators of La Voz De Mayo, Tata Rambo, which is an amazing graphic novel telling a really, really important story about something that actually just had an anniversary this week. So let's bring him in. We got writer Henry Barajas. Welcome, Henry. And artist Jay Gonzo.
How's it going, everybody?
Put you guys up there so you can both be above me, I guess. Honestly, when Hector Rodriguez was talking to me about Texas Latino Comic Con, he kept saying over and over again he was so excited to get the creators of Tata Rambo. It's just really a groundbreaking comic that takes an aspect of the history of the region that is just not talked about a lot in pop culture that needs to be. And let's backtrack. Henry, for the people who haven't read it yet, what is Tata Rambo?
Tata Rambo is my great-grandfather. It's something we used to call my great-grandfather Ramon Jauregue in his later years because he was a World War II veteran. He was a Marine sniper, and he was also just very militant about civil rights for Mexican Americans, Mexican migrants, and Native Americans. And my whole life, everyone kept telling me that he was an amazing man that did amazing things, but really couldn't give me facts that I wanted growing up. So I did some independent, study and had sat down with him for a month and a half and took him to his last protest. And I was in the middle of writing his biography when I got a hold of John Lewis's March award-winning biography about his incredible life, and then I realized this kind of thing can be in comics, and that was my first love anyway. And I was very grateful that my employer, Top Gal Productions, Matt Hawkins, was keen enough to know that Gonzo was perfect for the gig, and it was just very serendipitous that Gonzo and I had already known each other through the Phoenix Comic Con and the Phoenix, Arizona con circuits. And he was able to bring in, he was able to put this on his workload and give it a kind of justice that I don't think anybody else could. So I'm very grateful that Gonzo was able to draw our 3 issues that were Kickstarter first. And then we took the final trade to the book market, library markets, and comic book stores as an original graphic novel that he designed. And very, very grateful for all the work that him and Bernardo Brice, our letter artist, and Claire Napier, our editor based in London.
I'm glad you mentioned March for a second because, when I read the book, it made me think of March. It made me think of Mouse. These stories that are people telling either their own story or their family story, but really taking advantage of what the comic book medium has to offer. Gonzo, Henry mentioned that you'd be perfect for this. I noticed a lot of the story had elements that are things you could only do in comics, where somebody will change age suddenly, or they'll reference things like Kirby Crackle, which is a little bit of a comics insider thing. And how much of this was from you? How much of this was like a back and forth between you and Henry?
I mean, that's a good question. A lot of it was on in the script. Like I really, Henry was very particular about the story that he wanted, but not in a like overbearing way, just in kind of like he knew what it needed to be, like content wise. So most of it was kind of servicing what he was looking for, but he was also open for me making suggestions as far as like, hey, if we do this or shift this one panel or maybe change this to a medium shot or something like that, it'll maybe look kind of better or will work kind of, work in a comic book kind of way and or kind of work visually. So he was always open for suggestions, but I want to say like, I don't know, maybe like 75-80% of it is just kind of, Henry knew what he wanted. And then, that other 25% is just me kind of like making sure it has visual interest and the emotional impact of kind of, what it needed to do, as opposed to just kind of being this like evenly paced, even units of just, bit after bit after bit. It's like, I kind of come in and go like, well, this should be bigger, that should be smaller. Let's kind of have this build to an emotional beat, what have you. But yeah. I mean, most of it was in the script, man. I just kind of made it happen. It was a really well written script. It was like it was comprehensive. There were very few questions. I was never confused as to like what time of day it was, or is this inside or outside, or wait a minute, weren't they just here but now they're here? Like, none of that. He was very clear and concise in it. So it was really a pleasure to work with as far as like collaboration goes.
Well, both through the script and through the art, it's very clear, not just, like you said, time of day and location, but also a type of storytelling. Some things are more of like a live, here's panel to panel what's happening. Some things are more of like almost like a flashback where you're just giving like a history of what's happening around that time and that kind of stuff. And so you have this good back and forth between it. Let's give a little bit of a background of what Tata Rambo's efforts were and what he was pushing for. Henry, can you tell us about the Yaqui tribe and why this anniversary was so significant? And was it 1978, I think?
Yeah, so in 1978, the Carter administration, with the help of Morris K. Udall and Senator Deacon Cheney, a lot of representatives in Arizona, they had worked with my great-grandfather, Ramon Jauregue, and the tribe, guys like the families like Yucapicios and Valencias and Cunas, and they had worked really hard over the span of 15 to 18 years to get the federal government to recognize them as a tribe versus Mexicans, because they were a native tribe that was based in what we know now as the northern part of Arizona, which was really more connected to the Sonoran Desert. And the Mexican government had waged war against them, and before that, the Spanish, invasion, and so it caused them to keep crawling up, eventually going over a border that had crossed them. So Ramon Jauregue, my great-grandfather, took a page, and had basically rebuilt his own United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, Loris Huerta chapter in Tucson, but that was specific to the indigenous peoples that were the Pascua Yaqui tribe, and trying to preserve their history, their culture, their rituals. And his wife, my great-grandmother, who's a character in the book, she was a Native American woman who, I think he was trying to protect it for her and his family, but, kind of got lost in the overall cause, which I think happens to a lot of civil rights leaders. And that really put a strain on his home and also on his personal life. I think he was just a misunderstood orphan that was looking for love in all the wrong places, just to quote some Texas lyrics there. But
it's funny you mentioned that, how the family kind of fell by the wayside a little bit as the cause pushed forward. It's something that's very tempting for a lot of people telling a story, especially when it's either the story of a hero or the story of a family member, to just focus on the good. But like with Mouse, for example, you show the good, the bad, and the ugly of Tata, and there's he makes some very human mistakes. It's not just hey, look at this hero that my family was. Was that something that you ran by the family first and said, by the way, I'm going to show some of the negative stuff? Or is it just like when the book came out, they're like, did you have to mention that?
Well, I had spent a lot of time with Ramon, and whatever he told me was kind of what I put in the book. So I found that as a blessing. My family was very supportive in a lot of ways, and one of those ways was helping me gather information about him and his accomplishments. So I was lucky to have some support. There was some elders in the family that were a little bit reluctant to have that public, but I don't blame them. And at the end of the day, this was something I had to do for myself. As much as I wanted it to be an amendment to history for the city of Tucson, for the Pascua Yaqui tribe, and for my family, this was something that I needed to get out of my system that had lived in my body and brain and heart for 5 years.
I want to talk about the tribe for a second. And you said how the border crossed them. I think this is a very unique aspect of history. And I'm sure they're not the only tribe this applies to, but when most, I got to be specific, most people in the U.S. think about, Native Americans. They think about, Trail of Tears. They think about forced relocations. They think about reservations. But the Yaqui tribe, they came from, Mexico, which had whole other issues with the way that natives were treated. But as a result, they were still in their ancestral location when the U.S. took over Arizona, right? So this is a very, very different situation where they had to suddenly become recognized by the U.S. government, as opposed to other nations that had been known by the U.S. government since the founding of the U.S. pretty much. What did you have to do, like additional kind of research into that cultural history when you're putting this together?
Yes, but I was very grateful that there was a lot of people smarter than me that had already done that for me. There was a lot of the University of Arizona was a very keen and curious bunch all through the 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. They kind of figured out what they wanted to talk about out of the 80s. So after the 80s, you really don't see a lot of information about the Yaquis or even the social aspects that they were really drilling in about. You know, they were really good at the time that my great grandfather was working with them, doing their own independent census, their own independent kind of what people were working, what kind of work they were doing, you know, how many families per household. I did so much research that at a certain point I had to really just stop, because it was really I kept getting more questions and answers. And the important part of that story, was my great grandfather. And I wanted it to be a beautiful story. And that's why when Gonzo draws it, and you see it, it's he brings in a certain aspect that like I said, that nobody else has. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. He was able to drive down to the land and take pictures and feel the story that in a way that I don't think a lot of people would have or could have.
Gonzo, did you have to do additional research, or was it mostly just on the road taking pictures? Because I look at some of the art and I'm like, wow, you really captured some intense. I feel like I'm there with a lot of these images. So what kind of research did you do?
Well, I really wanted. I mean, Tucson is very much a character in the book, and Henry was great about sharing all the research and findings that he had with me, and then being able to go down to Tucson is great, because it's a city that really, especially in Arizona, it still has a sense of history. Like a lot of Arizona towns just don't. They seem like they sprung up in the 50s or 60s maybe, but Tucson has a sense of having been around a while. And my wife's family's from there, so we go down quite a bit. I got married in Tucson, so it does have a special place for me. And I love the town, so I just just kind of being able to like kind of go to where the tribe used to be, that side of the town, and kind of drive around. The little church that used to actually, that still stands, that's featured in one of the store or one of the pages there, and kind of see where it lives in relation to things, and like in the relation to downtown, and kind of how literally marginalized the Yaqui people are, like where they, what side of the freeway they're on, that sort of thing. And so, I mean, just getting a feel for it was like kind of more important to me, and kind of being able to convey that feel, because I feel comics are about, they're not really about what you show, and they're not really about what you say. They're kind of about how you feel about what is shown and said. So I wanted to make sure that the kind of emotional resonance was in each panel, and in how the panels were laid out, as well as what was the content of each panel was. And in the color palette that I used, like Henry was really big on like making sure this looks like a Tucson sunset, which is a very specific image that if you haven't been to Tucson for a sunset, you kind of don't know, but luckily I have like when he said that, I'm like, I know what you're going for here. I know what you're looking for.
The benefit to having an artist who's in the same state, that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and part of the, like you had mentioned before, part of the kind of appeal of this book is that it both deals with the external events and the kind of facts that happened, and the kind of internal conflicts of like him being an orphan and a war veteran, and kind of drinking alcohol in the morning, and like all of these things, and kind of just who he is. Like, I like that we don't make him look perfect, so that like great deeds could be done by anyone. We're like, look, we don't need perfection from our from people who make a difference. We just need them to make a difference, kind of thing. And we're not going to kind of lionize him in a way that is unrealistic. But also, I being able to kind of like delve into his interior life, which is something that comics do really well, right? Like you can get kind of what's going on in people's heads. Being able to exemplify that, and kind of like the artistic style and the color palette and all of that kind of lends to the emotionality that comes out with it, and then kind of emotional resonance that I try to elicit from the reader. So, and just being in the place kind of gives me a context for how that emotionality might flourish and kind of navigate through that world. So yeah, it was important to me to like kind of go to those places and see what they were and kind of stand where like, you know, Ramon probably stood and kind of look out at like, you know, it's one thing to like say that he felt isolated or marginalized, but it's another to like pull up into that neighborhood and look and see that like, oh man, these people are shoved out to the side. Like, you know, and when you feel that it's
practically underneath the freeway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you know, it's one thing to say that, but it's a totally other to like just be there, right? So, yeah, man, being there really made a difference and kind of being able to pull that emotionality onto the page and or at least attempting to anyway. I mean, I hope I did a good job at it.
Well, speaking of emotionality, I want to ask, you know, Gonzo, you've drawn things that are fictional or fictionalized, but then you've also drawn this, which is grounded in reality, even if it is a fictionalized retelling. And Henry, you've worked on different comics, you know, through your job with Top Cow. You've worked with different things. Does it have a different emotional resonance as a creator when you are working on something that actually happened to people? So, like Gonzo, when you're drawing something like some of the violence and stuff that happens, does it affect you differently, or is it you just do you have to approach it differently as an artist when you're drawing it than you would say you know, wrestlers beating each other up?
I just felt a tremendous amount of responsibility to the source material. Like I wanted to not screw it up, you know, like there was just a sense of like, this has to be right. So I was a little more, I don't know, like not really cautious, but just like respectful, you know, like I just need to treat this all with respect because these are real people's lives that I'm making here, you know, and not to caricature it in a way that would be self-serving or you know, yeah, like just kind of, for lack of a better term, like artistically masturbatory, you know, like just like, oh, this will look cool, you know what I mean? Like I needed to kind of tamp my own ego down, I guess, in order to service the story, and knowing the importance of the subject matter and that these were real people really was kind of like a very kind of Zen experience and like shedding my ego and just trying to be of service, you know, of both to like the thing that Henry was trying to do and the truth of what had happened, you know, like I just tried to like be in that very Zen kind of I'm of service place, you know, which was different for me. Yeah. Cause you know, it's in as much as I'd love that there like a big fight to break out and so, you know, some explosions to happen. I just, you know, I can't insert
shows up and you're like,
yeah. How great would that have been at the last page of this? Just aliens land.
It's like to be continued.
Yeah. Like swerve.
Henry, same basic question though. Is there a difference between writing stories about people that you have no connection to, whether fictional or not, and writing stories about family and community?
No, but if you could bring up that double page spread that you had on earlier.
Sure.
How much time do we have? Is this 30 or an hour?
It's going to go 45 minutes, and I was going to go about
cool.
halfway through to start talking about the next big project that Gonzo's working on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we had time for that. No, not that one, the other one with the night grid. Just to answer your question, I've been lucky to have worked on a award-winning anthology titled Where We Live that was curated by J.H. Williams III and Wendy Wright Williams III. And I had the opportunity to write about a mass shooting survivor, written about Dolores Huerta for another anthology. But like, I think Gonzo can attest to this, but the fictional characters you create are almost more real than the people that you do write and draw.
I guess because you have control over their whole life, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, I mean, a lot of writers, I don't think care to admit this, but it's an extension of yourself. So it's like about you and what you think and where you're coming from, or, you know, just another point of view. And sometimes it's a little bit more real because these characters live with you for a long time and they're in your head in a way that you only understand and no one else can get. I mean, if you're writing it and if you're drawing it, you know, there's just certain attachments you have. So I kind of try to approach it all the same because this is like, you know, to me, it's real life. And I take this all so seriously. But that double page spread you had up earlier, if you could bring it back up, that was kind of I like to say the moment where our band that we had, this isn't from the second issue. And this is like our sophomore album, in my opinion. And this was the 9-panel grid that I had really wanted and that Gonzo, and just to kind of just show our collaborative effort where I told him I wanted a 9-panel grid. But if you see on the second page, there's this just this motion of the character Ray and he's smoking. And when you read that, you're reading that from right to left, right to left, right to left. But like when you look at it on the page, it's like an animated still, you know. It's such a amazing piece. And Gonzo has a really I mean, if you want to elaborate on how you created this, but please do. But because there's even down to the colors that he uses has a reason to everything.
Yeah, it was one of those things that kind of, this is one of those places where it I think almost lined up perfectly when I thumbnailed it out, and then I went back to Henry and was like, hey man, if we just flop these two panels, like we would have this great effect where I can like, it goes from like personal moment to like, or like quiet moment to conflict, a quiet moment to conflict, and it kind of checkerboards. And then I go, you know, and then it was like, and then we can line up Ray down the middle of that second panel where it's kind of unraveling for Ramon, and it's like this animated sequence of him like there lighting the cigar, you know, flicking the ash in the cigar, and it just kind of, I just wanted this kind of like even beats of like, you know, I mean, Henry had almost written it that way, but once we tweaked it a little bit, it was just like even beats of like, you know, fun, conflict, and then ultimately, you know, in the upper left of the second page, you know, he's with someone walking, and then the lower right, he's like completely alone now. So at this point, it's like, this is when he's kind of like, there's no going back for him. He's kind of like, he's pissed his family off. He's pissed his allies and his enemies off at this point, you know, and he's just like gonna do the thing that he knows he has to do because that's all he's ever known how to do, is just like move forward alone if necessary, doing the right thing, and being able to kind of like have all this evenness of panels, and then the last one not have a panel at all, have that, even that gets stripped away from him, right? He doesn't even have the confines and luxury of a panel to contain him anymore. It all just kind of, it was all kind of there in the script and just needed a tiny bit of, you know, of reworking, and it worked out kind of perfectly. And yeah, I mean, it was just cool to put all that together, because it's like, you know, Henry kind of knows what I can do, and he's feeding me the right things. And then once I put them all in there, I'm like, oh, if we just do this, it'll be like, you know. And then he's like, yeah, do that perfect. And then I know when he saw those pages, he was like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. And it's like, we kind of were like, weren't having to say a lot to get the exact thing we both wanted out of the page. It's like, it's artistically impactful, and story-wise, it services the emotionality that's trying to come across and emotionally resonant with the audience who reads it. And yeah, man, I think this is where we gelled, right, Henry? Like we just were like, yes, this is the page.
Yeah,
now we know what we're doing.
Ray, like I wanted him to have a trademark where he's always smoking a cigar. And I think cigars are just a very invasion of your space. You're commanding the room. Like, as soon as you walk in, you smell a cigar being smoked. And this guy's coming into this land and trying to take this land, but also like making his presence known with that action.
You know, this kind of ties to what I was saying earlier, where throughout this whole graphic novel, you guys both really take advantage of things that are unique to comic books. You know, there's often that people say like, "Oh, Watchmen, you know, couldn't have been adapted," and they, you know, they did, but it was very different. And then a Mouse, you know, they said repeatedly it can't be adapted. Certainly, you can adapt things, but there are certain things that only work in one medium. And these, you know, talking about the panels, talking about, you know, the changing of shapes and sizes and the color gradients, these are things that only really work in comics, and you guys really took advantage of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was for the medium in every aspect possible.
Yeah, Henry wasn't writing like his movie pitch. He was like writing a comic book. Like, you know, like I think Henry and I both are of the opinion, we've talked about this too, like we love making comic-ass comics. Like I really, like that's what we want to do. Like I'm not, you know, because comics or movies make for boring comics, you know, or at least, you know, like the storyboards aren't necessarily dynamic because they were intended to be movies, and so they need to move. You know, but comics can do things that you can't do in movies. You know, one of those things is like with that 2-page spread is it's not only is it a dilation of time, but it's like a multifaceting of time, right? Because you get the way that all the moments work together simultaneously. You can focus on any one of them, and you can also focus on its relation to the ones that surround it. Yes, and it's just something you can't do in something that has to be chronological, like a movie or a TV show, right? Like that kind of simultaneity of all moments in one moment is something you can only do in comic books, and being able to kind of weave those into tapestries of emotionality is kind of is exemplified only in comic books. Like you can only do that there. So, and then, you know, and having a writer who knows that that's a thing you can do and wanting to do that is important, as opposed to just like a bunch of like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Henry was thinking about like, oh, well, I need this to be next to this, because not only are those moments important, but those moments are important in relation to each other, not just in chronological order, but in juxtaposition as well. Right. So, yeah, man. I mean, that's a really high-minded way of saying like it just needs to look cool and be cool and read cool all at the same time.
And Kevin, you had mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, there was that page where I talked to Ramon for the last time. We're sitting on a truck together, and for the duration of creating this comic, I felt like I was talking to all versions of himself for a long time, and I felt like I was trying to be in those spaces when he was a child, and when he was, parentless, when he was a Marine veteran, when he was a Chicano activist, when he was at the end of his life. That was all who I felt like I was direct correlation with.
Well, with that, I want to transition to Comics Ask Comics, as Gonzo put it. Gonzo, you're working on a new project.
Yep.
And Henry was actually talking about it a little bit earlier, right before we got started, that he was interested in as well. What is La Mano del Destino? Can you tell us about that and how far along the project is?
Oh, okay. So La Mano del Destino is kind of the exact opposite of not really, of Tata Rambo. No, it's dumb fun comics, right? So it is a story about a luchador who is stripped of his identity and stripped of his championship because he won't take a dive. He won't take money to take a dive, but his friends will take that money, so they betray him and unmask him in the ring. He is distraught, doesn't get to be that guy anymore. He's approached by this mysterious promoter who makes a Faustian bargain with him to get a new strength and a new identity, that of La Mano del Destino, to exact his revenge. But like all good comic book bargains, there's strings attached. So he's trying to get out of the deal, still get his revenge, but also remain the person he knows himself to be. Like, he doesn't want to have to become a monster to defeat a monster. And it all happens in this like swanky alternate universe Mexico City, where like lucha libre is the most important thing in that world. Everything of any kind of importance is settled by luchadors. So like if my business wants to take over your business, I would my luchador would take on your luchador, and whoever wins the business. So I really wanted to up the stakes of like lucha libre. I really wanted to set it like in this like kind of swanky 60s futurist world where like the bright, vibrant pageantry of both like Mexican culture and lucha libre culture kind of permeates everything about the world they inhabit. And so it's 6-issue series. I've done all 6 issues now over the past decade, and I'm collecting them all into a trade paperback. And so the current project is the trade paperback version of it. And so with the trade paperback, I'm going to collect all 6 issues as they were printed in English. All the stories, all the covers are going to be in there. But it's going to be a flip book. So when you flip it over, the other side of it is going to be all 6 issues collected in Spanish. So everything that was in English in the English version is now in Spanish, but everything that was, there's a couple of Spanish words in the English version, they're going to be in English in the Spanish version. So it's going to be like the Spanglish kind of like ratio switches between the English and Spanish versions. But I also didn't want one language to seem subordinate to the other. So I didn't want to just put the Spanish language in the back of the book or in the front of the book. Like I wanted, if you're interested in the Spanish version, you have a Spanish cover, you've got that Spanish side you can open it up on. The same with the English side. So I'm kickstarting it now. I had been self-publishing the other issues as they came out. I was able to finance that, but now because it's going to be all 6 issues, and it's closer to 7 issues because issue 6 is a double page or double size issue. It's 44 full pages, and I do 22-page comic books. I'm trimming it down to that 19 that the industry has kind of settled on. Like they're all 22-page comics except for the last one, which is 44 pages. So you get 172 story pages. So it's like that times 2 plus 24 pages of like process stuff. Everything from like how I select my color palette to like why I put the book together, and there's also pinups by 14 artists. So you're getting 400 plus pages of comic book that I just couldn't afford to finance on my own to do that, like on the trade paperback. So I'm currently kickstarting it to try to get people to pre-order it. I'm trying to keep my tiers kind of like as low as possible so people can engage at whatever level they want. I'm really just kind of trying to make it up in quantity, like getting more people to kind of back into it. So I am like close to 50% funded right now, and I'm looking at it right now. You've got almost 18,000. Almost. You're like this close to 18,000. So that's how many days has it been up so far? Only like 2, right? Oh, no. So I did the full 60-day campaign because I knew the kind of audience for this is kind of niche. And honestly, the Latinx comic buyer has kind of been underserved by the direct market for so long. Their ears aren't even out for the messaging, right? Like they don't even know to listen for a message that is for them. So I knew that I was going to have to kind of more than meet them halfway. Like I'm going to have to kind of go out and find them and let them know this thing's been made for them to come check us out. It's Latinx comics by a Latinx creator about a Latinx subject for you, so check it out. And yeah, so I've been doing well. I've been getting a lot of kind of like press on it and kind of, notoriety, and Kickstarter itself was kind of like help promote the book. So but I realized it was going to be work. So I gave myself the maximum amount of time of 60 days. So we're coming up on halfway through the campaign, and we're coming up on halfway funded. So it's looking positive. All those bots keep telling me it's going to fund, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop promoting the hell out of it as much as I possibly can.
I just started Kickstarter recently, so I'm getting familiar with those bots. They're so friendly, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I wasn't expecting that aspect of it, because but I also know that when I go to a convention and I'm selling comic books, people will still come up and try to sell me stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'm here trying to make money. Why would you want to take it from me? And so this is me like trying to raise money, and people emailing me every day, telling me how they want some of my money.
Would you like to make more money? Just give us some money.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, how about I just keep my money and you keep yours, and we go our separate ways?
Well, talk to me about the process. Some people in the comment section were talking about how much they love the art on Tata Rambo. I look at the art here and I'm seeing some similar color palettes. Obviously, it's a whole different feel. Mm-hmm. Did your experience on Tata Rambo affect your art process going forward?
Well, this comic, I really wanted it to, because it happens in the 60s. I really wanted it to look and feel and even smell like an old comic. So I go to kind of great lengths.
The smell as a Kickstarter.
No, actually, all you have to do is print it on a newsprint on uncoated paper. So it's absorption print rather than evaporative print, and the ink is in the paper, not on the paper. So I kind of created this process also to kind of make it look weathered, like it had been done with those old crappy plastic plates they used to use in the 60s. And so there's a kind of I had developed that process for La Mano del Destino for the wrestling comic, and I took that sensibility and actually applied it to Tata Rambo, because
so it kind of goes back and forth then.
Yeah. I had already kind of developed it, and then when we originally did La Voz De Mayo Tata Rambo, I had done some kind of clean looking pages, and I'm like, because this is memory and because this is kind of like retrospective, like, and it happens in Tucson in the 60s and 70s, like I think I need to kind of do the same thing and kind of give it a little bit of like faux weathering to kind of make it look lived in, like well-worn memory. So I would say that, yeah, my wrestling comic informed my the work I did for Henry rather than the other way around. And also in doing La Mano, I had developed like a very limited color palette because I wanted it to just notably be a curated reality. Like I wanted to confess the artifice, like this is a story. And in working in the confines of the like 15 colors I use, or no, there's 12 colors in La Mano del Destino, and I only used 3 of them, or only used on La Mano himself, and the other 9 are the ones that I colored the rest of the book with. So setting those kind of parameters taught me to be judicious with how I used my color palette throughout the book, but it also creates a visual identifier that is that book, like you just kind of see the palette, that it's a La Mano comic. So I took those sensibilities and I applied them to La Voz De Mayo, and I think I might have got as many as 15 colors in Tata Rambo. Like I think I added a few more, and there isn't that like visual signifier of like, oh, these colors are only used here. But I did have in my head a little bit of like dramatic scenes will have these color palette, like kind of mellow scenes will have that, and kind of there is a little bit of color coding that happens in La Voz, but not as much as La Mano, wherein like literally if you see that green, if you see that magenta, if you see that robin's egg blue, like they only ever exist with La Mano, or if he's around, and so you kind of know he's there if you see those colors.
Henry, let me ask, what do you think of Gonzo's book? I'm assuming you've seen a little bit more of it than some of the rest of us have, but even if you've only seen what the rest of us have, what do you think?
It's one of those things where it is a truly unique, really something that you can't find anywhere. There's the love and appreciation for lucha libre that, like, and I was just thinking about this before jumping on, like, this is like the kind of wrestling you want to see, and I think we don't really get it anymore unless you're watching lucha libre. Like, I feel like as a lifelong wrestling fan, like I find myself, a couple times a week watching old WWF fights, and there's just so much more raw and technical fun to it, and also they're not all named like regular guys' names. Like this is like there's the Undertaker, there's a guy that like is literally dead on the ring, and there's the Hitman, and like there's a guy that carries a snake around, like La Mano makes me feel like that's what I'm watching again. I'm not watching a guy with regular ass names like John Cena or Jonathan, whatever. Like there's just this really amazing love for it. And Gonzo has a reach. I was at Thought Bubble last November, and this guy picked up my book and said Lamano, and I was like shocked that this British dude knew Gonzo's book, and I wasn't shocked at the same time. I was surprised, and it made me very excited for the fact that this is like a recognizable art. Yeah, I mean, when I met Gonzo, he gave me the first issue, and there was a lot of chatter and a lot of excitement about him doing this book, and to see it all done. And while we were working on La Voz, he transitioned. We'd sent the book to the printer in October, and that day or next day, he started working on the last issue of Lamano, and we had calculated he had worked 90 days straight to do both books. So, this is
that's powering through it.
that's dedicated to making comics, and that's one of the biggest respects that I have for somebody, and I really appreciate his, love and what he's willing to give to tell a story using pictures and words. So if you like luchadors, if you like comic books, and if you look in the back of his in his background, one of those masks is available to be purchased. Like, you can be a part of this world. And I think that's really important when you're making comics, especially in superhero comics. Like, if you look behind me, I have like Batman toys. Like, these are like I love Batman so much that I wish I could make.
As soon as this camera's going off, you're going to put on the cowl, aren't you?
Well, I'm already wearing. Yeah, I'm wearing the suit underneath this shirt. So
that's understandable. That's understandable.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Gonzo about the story for a second. You mentioned that his mask gets ripped off. For people that aren't familiar with Lucha Libre, I was talking to somebody about it earlier, that it's a very different type of culture than, say, U.S. wrestling, right? The way I describe it is, I say that the mask is not to hide your identity; it's to reveal who you really are.
Yeah, I literally say that in the book.
There you go. So that's something I've said repeatedly, and it's the idea that if you take off the mask, you are taking off their identity. And I'm just kind of well, tell us a little bit more about that world of Lucha Libre, at least the world as you're presenting it, I guess.
Well, I've talked about this a bit other places, but I'll paraphrase here. So I think that Lucha Libre is so resonant with Mexican culture because of our kind of tenuous. We were talking about this kind of earlier. It's like we have a tenuous relationship with identity, right? Because we all have the last names of the conquistadors, but the skin color of the conquered, right? Like, so kind of like, Mexico being primarily a mestizo culture, like a mixed culture, it's hard to say inherently you are one thing or the other. Like, you're kind of a blend of the two of them. And so we hang less importance on our inherent identity and more on our actions and what we do to create an identity through what we do. And I think Lucha Libre is kind of a distillation of that, right? Like, so American wrestling is very ego driven. It's all about being bigger and stronger and imposing your will on someone else. Lucha Libre is about completely concealing your identity, defining yourself just by your win-loss record as far as how you perform as a wrestler. And then the wrestling itself is about agility and leverage and dynamism. And it's less about just brute strength like it is in the ego-driven American wrestling. And I think that's culturally resonant with Latin culture just because of our tenuous identity, our relationship with identity. And so these are men who says, it doesn't matter who I am. I'm going to cover that up completely. It only matters what I do. And I think that culturally we identify with that because we're like, yeah, we should put aside this kind of genetic birthright as to like what our success level can be and just fully be judged on merit. And I think that's why it's so back. But it also extends beyond the ring. It's the kayfabe of wrestling goes beyond the ring in Mexico. These guys only wear the mask. They don't get their alter egos. They don't get to be someone else outside the ring. And so everything about their persona gets wrapped up in that mask and is worn on your face, and it's fragile. It can be taken away. It can come off of your face, and you never get to be that. So every win, every loss, every victory, every fan is affixed to your face in a way that can be removed and stripped from you every time you go in the ring. And I think there's a nobility in that also resonates with the culture. And so I really wanted to kind of show those stakes within the comics. Like, I wanted to show the importance of the mask. And so like in issue 1, there's a scene where he goes home and he showers and he's in shadow, so you don't see his face in the shower. But then you see the exterior of the shower and there's a towel and the mask hanging. And in the next scene, the mask is gone. And then in the scene after that, the towel is gone. Because the first thing he goes for is the mask, because that means he's no longer naked.
I love that. That to me, that is how you tell stories with luchadors. I love that. I love that concept.
Thank you. Yeah. I just I wanted to give that weight, the gravitas of it. And it is it's performative and it's ritualistic, but it's pageantry, right? Because with justice without pageantry is futile. Like it's impotent, right? Like we need our judges to have robes on and our lawyers to be like any kind of like justice, any kind of, you know, it needs a certain amount of pageantry to it. And this world, the you know, good versus evil is being, you know, writ large in operatic tones out in the squared circle. And it needs a pageantry to have gravitas. And I wanted all of that to kind of come through, from the color palette to the operatic stakes that I kind of imbue into my comic.
If you like luchadors showering, this is your comic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that is what the world needs more of.
Yeah. If you want to see
a towel.
Yeah, he's in. Oh, there's one scene where I put him in a very there's a James Bond. I forget which movie it is. There's a James Bond movie where he's wearing the shortest bathrobe ever. It's just like, it's not even mid-thigh bathrobe.
That's one of the Connery ones too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, it is, right? So there is a scene where he comes out of the shower to talk to his trainer, and I just like, oh, he's got to be in that James Bond bathrobe. He's got to have the shortest, and literally the sleeves are longer than the hem of that bathrobe. So yeah. So yeah, man, if you're into that sort of thing, definitely check out La Mano del Destino.
So on the note of wrestlers in bathrobes, I think I want to thank you guys both for coming on here. That was this is really cool. I know that people have been continuing to talk about La Voz De Mayo, and I know that I've been hearing more and more people talk to me about La Mano del Destino. So if somebody wants to find you guys online, where's the best way to find you? Henry, what's the best way to find you online?
I'm on Instagram, Henry J. Barajas, and Twitter. Facebook is kind of a personal channel, but you can find me there as well. La Voz De Mayo has its own Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. So check us out there. And I do work for Top Cow Productions, so I'm always engaging with fans there as well. And we're very grateful that Top Cow and Image Comics was took a chance on a book that is, you know, that is hard to kind of adapt as a film or television series, but thankfully it's finding its place in teachers' classrooms and libraries and in museums. I got a notification that this museum in France has added it to its indigenous collection. So
rad, that's awesome.
And Gonzo, where can we find you?
I would say right now, just go to the Kickstarter. You know, so if you just go to Kickstarter, look at La Mano del Destino, it'll come up. And if you watch the video at the very end, it's like the list of all of my social medias, because there's like me, there's ones for La Mano, there's one for my publishing. So just check out the video or fast forward to the end. Yeah, exactly. I think I might make a mini one, but yeah. So just go to check the video out if you want to. Just fast forward to the very end. There's a list of all my social medias there.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys both very much.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for coming to the Texas Latino Comic-Con Mi Casa event. Please stay tuned. In 15 minutes, we're going to have another panel. If you just check us out on the Texas Latino Comic-Con Facebook page, you will see the comic book world of Jules Rivera, and she does some amazing, amazing stuff. Thank you, guys. See you a little bit later.